looks like the numbers are starting to slow down. So, yeah, let's get started. So, before we go through today's agenda, we do always like to introduce ourselves. So, my name's Emily. I'm the director of customer success over here at SportsRecruits. I worked with our customer success specialist team. I work with our customer success team that works with our clubs as well. So, if you ever have any trouble on the platform, I work with a team that helps give you answers. I also work with our recruiting analyst who works with families one on one and giving them guidance throughout the recruiting process. So, yeah, this is a really important topic and not something at Sports Groups we've ever presented on. And we're lucky to have Skye here to really walk us through, exactly what you guys should be doing as parents and guardians to help support your student athletes. So, yeah, Skye, all you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Well, my name is Skye Eddy. Hello, everyone. I'm the founder of Soccer Parenting, do a lot of work in supporting, empowering parents. We really believe at Soccer Parenting that when parents are resourced with education, guidance, support, that players will be more inspired and have a deeper connection to the game and stick with sport longer, and that will bring them to a healthy adulthood. So this topic is really relevant to that. The importance of a break, giving a little bit of time off, and we'll dive into some best practices and understanding for parents. But I founded Soccer Parenting, just to quickly give you a quick update or overview. I founded Soccer Parenting as my daughter Callie was coming up in the game. Emily mentioned my daughter. I'm a former professional player. I'm an active coach. I'm a B licensed coach. I'm a coach educator for US Soccer. So heavily involved in the game. I'm a former college coach myself, and obviously played in college as well. And I just really started to realize the challenges that I was uniquely feeling with my daughter as she was coming up in the game.
Mhm.
And despite all my background in the game and the fact that I know I'm a very good parent, I'm very
Mhm.
level-headed, I'm not crazy, I'm not out of control by any means. But I needed more help and guidance, and I was surprised at how difficult I found the journey as a sports parent. So that's really been the impetus, if you will, behind soccer parenting and the work that we're doing. And I'm so excited to be here today with Sports Recruits, a partner that we really value, to be talking to you about how we can support players, which is, as we're moving into this time of the year when many players, not all, but many players across the country will have a little bit of a break. So we'll kind of dive into some things that we can be considering during that time.
Awesome. Thanks, Skye. Great. So, just a quick agenda what we're going to talk about, what you should be doing to support your players during this season break, this in between where they may not be playing. How can they continue through the recruiting process? We're going to talk about just the motivation, how you can continue to motivate your student athlete, again, with this weird in between time. And then we're going to end with some recruiting tips that you can be doing during the off season and how you can utilize sports recruits to do that. So, great. All you,
Awesome.
Sky.
I'll kind of dive in here, parents. We welcome if there is ability to ask a question in the chat or bring a question forward. We certainly encourage you to do that. We want this to be as interactive as possible for those that are listening. But, some really key considerations for us during the break. Let's kind of just first talk about the importance of one. And I think it's important that we bring this forward because in today's day and age in youth soccer, with schedules that are just jam-packed and kids go
Mhm.
from playing maybe high school into club into a showcase. And when they have a break from club, they're doing something with futsal. And, there's just so much that's demanded of the athletes. And I'm not even talking about if you have an athlete that's trying to play multiple sports, maybe they're running track in high school as well, or something like that. So it's just so important that we as parents manage and make sure that our children do have a bit of a break. It's important for our kids to take a step back from sort of the grind, if you will. We can imagine that as adults, the
Yes.
time if we're really busy at work for a whole week and, we just need the weekend to just take a step back. Our children need that as well over time. And I want to maybe just acknowledge the importance and that it's okay to take a bit of a step back. A step back meaning Maybe they take an entire 5 days off.
Mhm.
Maybe they don't get into the gym and do some extra work that they have been doing. That is totally okay. There's actually a really important reset that's going on as our children do that physically. So, our children have a load and a load and a load and this pressure on their body. They need to be able to reset and build a little bit so that when they go back to put the load, they can start at a higher place. Otherwise, they're always going to be kind of starting at a deficit. If we just keep loading and loading and doing more, then we build this deficit. So we need to give our children time. And during that time, experts that I've had on my site, such as John Cohn. I remember a conversation with Dr. Cohn around this and around like the physical growth that happens in this time in terms of muscle gain and things such as that, especially if our children are growing and are physically growing. It's so important for us, for them to take a break. And then, there's also this reset that happens not just physically, but mentally as well. And, I think about myself in situations where there's a lot going on. And when I have a chance to step back and take a bit of a break, sometimes I see things a little bit differently. For our children, oh, maybe that's they are having a conflict with a teammate and they can take a step back and mentally then they can see a different way to handle that. Or maybe there's some stress with a coach, or maybe there's some stress with the position they're playing and there's lots of learning that's happening and they're figuring things out with a new position they're playing or the position they're playing. And actually taking a step back can help them just sort of see things more clearly. And maybe when they get back to the field, they'll be able to thrive. Um,
Right. Oh,
mhm.
sorry, not to
Okay,
interrupt you, but
you go
you
ahead.
mentioned, 5 days. I guess what would like how long of a break would you recommend these student athletes to take to really have like that benefit of rest after having this really intense high school season,
Yeah.
still balancing club? Is there a magic number? Is there not? I don't know.
I mean, we have to be realistic here. Like sometimes there's just demands that is placed on the kids. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's a 4 day break. And then over the weekend, they have a tournament now for their club team. So
Mhm.
I think as parents, we can say, okay, how much of a break is there? And therefore, what does that need to look like? So if it's 5 days, maybe they literally just take 5 days off. That's
Mhm.
okay. If
Yeah.
it's a 3 week or a 6 week period of time, maybe then you go through and you kind of try to manage depending on your child. And I really do think that the child should be leading the way here. How are you feeling? This should all be based a lot on how they're feeling. But maybe if your child has a lot of anxiety and doesn't want to take a break, then you do need to step in and try to help structure that. But I'm not a physical therapist.
Yeah.
I don't have like a physio type background. So in terms of like the medical science around what the break is. Again, I'm just thinking about a conversation that we had on our platform with Dr. John Cohn related to this. And I do think the child should be leading the way in terms of their load and how they're feeling about their body. And it's important that our athletes learn to
Mhm.
understand how they're feeling.
Yeah.
But I would say that because the break is so different depending on the level the child's playing, the different demands that they have with between club and maybe school sports. I don't know that we can really kind of dictate. I would just say if it is a long break, meaning longer than 3 weeks, then yeah, they probably do need to get back in and get active
Mhm.
and maybe use this time to work on some other movements patterns or work on make sure that they're stretching and those types of things as they have this break.
Yeah, and you make a good point too that it should be the student athlete who's taking charge. So, I guess what are good questions for parents or guardians to ask their athletes to make sure, they are okay or how
Mhm.
are they feeling without trying to, you know, without really trying to be overbearing in a
Yeah.
sense, right? But just trying to guide them to maybe come to a realization of something they could do. Any like leading
Absolutely. And
questions?
this is like such a hard role as a parent, like when to push and when to step back and finding that
Mhm.
balance. And every child is so different. They feel differently at different times. You might ask them a question on Tuesday ask them the same question on Thursday and get a totally different response in terms of like them not wanting to engage with you. So, we need to acknowledge that as well. My favorite question to ask my kids is after a game, kind of car ride home question, if you will. I think it's relevant here is how do you feel? And I think that children need to, one, we need to acknowledge like we care how our children feel. There's another question people often ask or say is, I love to watch you play. Personally, I feel like that puts a little pressure on kids.
That's fair,
I like
yeah.
playing because my mom or dad likes to watch me do this, versus, how do you feel? And I think that's a relevant question now. And what we're asking our children is how they feel mentally, if they're tired, and we'll go through some signs of burnout so we can maybe
Mhm.
ask some questions and if they're feeling that. But also, how do you feel physically if they've had a little knock or an injury they're trying to work through, making sure that they're taking care of that as well during this time. So not just ignoring the ankle, but maybe this is an opportunity to strengthen it up to make sure that it's staying mobile, those types of things. Those would probably be some good questions. I think we need to be really curious, and our children need to be thinking about the number of hours that they're sleeping and the quality of their sleep. So those might be some questions. Can you tell if you have a better night's sleep than another night? Um, did that feel better? Why do you think that is? Maybe then you can dive into their just before bedtime practices around
Mhm.
screens or around having the phone in their room, all of those types of things. I think if we can help our children realize, and take some responsibility for that, I think it's really key. But those are the types of questions that we need to be asking during this time. And I do think, and we'll get into motivation and autonomy, that our children absolutely do need to be leading the way.
Yeah, it's great. Cool.
Awesome. So let's get into burnout. We talked a little bit about that. So these might be some questions that we're asking, like, if we know that signs of burnout, and I think burnout is an important conversation to have here, and we can layer it into this conversation because, we're talking about getting a break. And if our children are feeling burnout, then we actually, as parents, need to really make sure that we work hard to give them a break. Maybe it's even encouraging the child to talk to the coach,
Mhm.
and have a conversation with a coach so the coach can help them manage through this. But signs of a burnout, a lack of enjoyment. If your child is getting in the car after training and doesn't have a lot of positive things to say, if they're not looking forward to getting up to go to training or to the game, or they feel overwhelmed, if maybe they usually hang out with one or two teammates and now they're not, so maybe some questions that we can kind of ask is, hey, how's one of their, who their friends, how are they doing, or what's been going on in their life, or and see if your child knows. So if you feel like they're starting to withdraw from their teammates, maybe prompting them to consider reaching out to them through some different questions and some curiosity about their teammates. But that's definitely a sign of burnout. Increased conflict, maybe it's conflict with us as parents. We
Mhm.
often get the brunt of a child's stress. So maybe it's, they have a really loose temper with us, especially around the game. Like, I don't want to talk about it, or those types of things. But maybe they're getting into some arguments or starting to complain a lot about the dynamics of the team, the coach, other parents, the other team, starting to get really frustrated with a referee more than they normally do. These are all signs, when they're sort of compounded here, that we need to be thoughtful around. And then definitely if their performance declines. I'm going back again. I know I've referenced this a few times, this conversation with John, but that's what happens when the kids have too much load and they just keep getting loaded and don't have a time to bounce back. And when I say loaded, I mean have a really hard training session, or have a weekend where they're playing 4 games in a tournament over 3 days or 2 days. That's a lot. So if we keep having this load, then the kids don't have a chance to recover. And so their performance declines over time. And the same thing can happen emotionally when that load just becomes emotional. They just don't have a time to recover and to get back into a space where they can be thriving. And then I would say if the kids are complaining a lot more, this is something I was really, really clued into with my daughter. Usually when she was getting burned out or tired or when school was overwhelming, she just had too many things going on. Then I found that she complained a lot about, the knock that she received, or, how her ankle was a little sore, or started talking about bruises that she had, those types of things a little bit more.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like I'm like, oh my gosh, my daughter's burned out, so I need to like pull her out of sports. It wasn't anything like that. It was just really good for me to acknowledge that and support her through that. Give her
Yeah.
some extra attention, if you will, just to try to help her through any emotional drain that she was having. I kind of talked about a lot of these contributing factors in the conversation around just the signs, but I do really think it's important that we spend some time and we go through these. Our children unfortunately really feel a lot of pressure too often. We talk a lot around like all the pressure that kids have on winning and that parents and adults put on them around winning, or the feeling that the kids are feeling even through the college search. I mean, the college recruiting process was such a pressure cooker for my daughter. She was so overwhelmed with the idea of having to pick up a phone and call an adult stranger and talk to them. If the kids are feeling that pressure, then that actually can lead to the burnout. So it might not even be, something that's specifically related to team dynamics. Other things can build this pressure, whether it be the recruiting process, like I said, pressure for social dynamics within the team is oftentimes what we're hearing about. Maybe it's pressure that they are feeling they're receiving from the coach. So we need to be thoughtful of that. And then I mean, children definitely have this sense and this feel of failure. That's kind of why I like asking my child after the game, how do you feel? Instead of, I love to watch you play. Because I think kids can perceive that statement in a lot of different ways, and it can kind of make them feel like they have to perform. We certainly don't want our children doing that. In fact, like failing is such an important part of learning and growing. So, and failing might be making a mistake. Failing might be, um, you know, uh, not showing up like they want as a leader and losing their temper on the field to the referee, or failure might show up as a school not being interested in them that they were really excited about, and receiving that feedback from one of the coaches, something like that. Um, Other contributing factors is just too much training. And so this is where we need to be thoughtful as parents. And some kids have the ability to manage a lot and other kids don't. But we really do need to be thoughtful around this. I will mention that this lack of autonomy comes up in a couple of different spaces in this conversation today. But when kids feel like they don't have a voice, when kids feel like they are just kind of being told what to do and that their voice doesn't matter, it can build into burnout too. And specialization is on this list. I'm curious, like how many parents have kids that are specializing in soccer, or a single sport, one of your other sports at this age. And oftentimes when kids have dreams of playing collegiately, then they do end up specializing. And that's I think in itself, there's absolutely nothing wrong with specialization. I think
Mhm.
one of the issues that we do have though is that it can often lead to not enough interactions with other people. If they're only interacting with their teammates, a set group of people, not experiencing different teams can be stressful. But a lot of times the specialization, and that contributing factor to burnout is just that it's too much. And our children really, really do need a break and some time away. And we can come up with some different routines. I think the next slide is around managing burnout. So let's pop over to that. But sorry, Emily, I know I'm just like going through all this
No, this
questions.
is all really great. And I'm just thinking my role before I was in now is I was working with families one on one through the recruiting process and just the recruiting process in general, especially now with roster caps, NIL, and all of that, it's even more competitive. So, working with these athletes, they feel, all right, I have to play a sport. I have to get the perfect grades. I have to be involved in this many clubs. And it starts to get super overwhelming. They're just doing way too much
Yeah.
to really be that student athlete that college coaches want. So I think it's really important too. You brought up specialization. Sometimes just getting in clubs or doing all of these things just to
Mhm.
do it may not be, it's could contribute to burnout. You should be doing things that excite you, that make you happy, that can be an outlet for you as well. So that's just something I want to share because I do feel like sometimes athletes are just like, let me check the box, let me check the
Yeah.
box. And when you start to do too much, you're going to get this burnout. So I
Yeah.
think just the recruiting process in general can be overwhelming and it is so competitive that you just really need to take stock on, what does bring you joy and what are the things you do want to put your time into.
Yeah,
But
no, I love that perspective on things. And yes, our kids just have so much pressure on them these days.
Mhm.
It's getting into college and doing, the way that they have to show up. I think one of our roles as parents is to really kind of prioritize, their mental health. Of course, that's what we do as parents, but to just be a little bit extra thoughtful and sometimes take some pressure off kids. Be cognizant
Mhm.
of if it's us that's putting that pressure on, like, oh, you really should do that. You really like French. You should join the French club,
Mhm.
and then not listening to our child, not giving them autonomy to make those decisions, uh,
Totally.
and get involved. Maybe if you do want your child, I don't want to like spend too much time on this topic, but I like the idea and
Yeah.
pull the thread just a second. Like, and this is a good lesson in autonomy for parents is so you do see that there are some gaps in their connection to school and that being more involved in school could be helpful and
Totally.
maybe it's asking the right questions, like and just setting a limit. Hey, I think it's important that you get involved in some organizations at school. Do you think that's important? This is why I think it's important. How do you feel about that? So having a good
Mhm.
conversation back and forth, and then maybe you leave the conversation with, well, good. Well, maybe within the next month you can identify a club that you want to get involved with, and do you think that that's doable within a month for you to join something? And then just leave it up to your child to do that.
Yeah.
Follow them, follow up with them, hound them too much. I made a lot
Yeah. And I
of
think
mistakes like that.
Yeah, I think like setting goals too, like, let's talk about this again in a month, not like you need to be signed up for this in a month or in a,
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's adding
yeah,
more pressure. I think
yeah,
that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So when we do feel like our children are getting close to burnout or they're getting up to a break, this all applies to whether it's burnout or whether it's like, okay, now your child has a break. This is kind of how we can manage either the burnout or the break. Um, Absolutely prioritizing sleep. Of course, this goes for all the time for our children. There's so much research around the missing hours of sleep that our children have. So we need to really, really make that a priority, getting into sleep routines, those types of things, and focusing on nutrition and hydration. I love the fact that both my kids walk around everywhere with a water bottle now. We're
Yeah.
seeing that to be so much more the case with kids. I never had a bottle
No,
growing up or, thought about any of this. So, now the science is really clear on the importance of hydration. And having that be water, not necessarily just like a Gatorade all the time, those types of things. We have some really good content on soccer parenting regarding nutrition and hydration. I encourage parents to check out. But we do need to be focusing on that. And then specifically schedule rest days. So if your child is like in the middle of a season and is starting to get burned out, then we need to just say, hey, this is a day off. And not necessarily a day that they're missing. Maybe it is the day off. Of course, your child will have a day off from soccer. And when they do that, they really, really take the day off and let their body really recover during those moments. So really make sure that we schedule those in, um, and kind of those lazy days or whatever you want to call them that they get scheduled in. And if for whatever reason the way the schedule's stacking up, your child like really doesn't have a day off, then that's something that I think your child, depending on their age, needs to bring forward to their coach. Like, hey, coach, like I'm going 8 days in a row here. Is there anything that we can do to try to, give me some more time off? Or what do you think I should do? And, having a good conversation with our coach around that.
Yeah.
And then, as parents, we need to understand our child's limits, be really careful not to put limits on them, but to let them push themselves so they learn to grow and they learn to challenge themselves. But also, we need to acknowledge that our children do have limits, just like we have limits, and help them understand that if they do start reaching it, they ultimately need to be the one that acknowledges it. So all of these are moments of us to teach our child, um, you know, how they feel, and maybe it's asking that question, like, do you feel like you're close to your limit? Or if they did have like an emotional breakdown, then maybe the conversation is, well, it seems like you've maybe reached your limit, and so that they can start to frame this for themselves, so that as they're coming up to that in the future, they can say, okay, I'm feeling it, so I'm going to step away right now or take a little bit of a break. Um, and then, there's some really important considerations here around mental recovery and the emotional support that we can be providing. So important. I remember as an athlete myself growing up, I was actually that kid that was like the president, the vice president of the school and in six clubs. And I was a four-sport athlete in high school and played club soccer. So it was just crazy. And I gotta say, I still remember the feeling of just like, when I would walk home and my mom walk in the door, my mom would have like cleaned my room for me, or, dinner would be on the table and be so nice that it was there waiting. So, our parents supporting us in those moments, I think is really, really key. And we need to encourage our children to find balance outside of soccer. Maybe it's spending time with friends that they've lost touch with during the season, that are school friends or neighborhood friends, or maybe it's finding a place to volunteer and seek out new things that they're curious about learning more about, and ways they can get involved with the community. Um, and and fun is the next statement here is emphasize fun. And it's such a challenging word. When I use the word fun in my education with parents and coaches, I automatically get pushback. And I know that I lose parents because they're like, I don't want my kid to have fun. Like this is supposed to be challenging. And I just want to acknowledge how essential fun is to high performance athletes. And we know from research that even Olympic level athletes say, if I'm not having fun, I will quit. So, like, fun and the fun factor to a sporting experience is really, really important. And so maybe as parents, we can emphasize that by making sure that we're laughing and talking about something funny that happened during a game, and talk about the enjoyment that you witnessed with players on the bench. It looked like you were having a lot of fun there at the end of the game, or something that might have happened during the game. Really trying to help our children and pull that out, that sense of enjoyment and wonder around the sport. And obviously, we need to create a supportive environment. That environment might not just be us. Maybe your child would benefit from talking to a therapist or sports psychologist. We need to create a supportive environment with the adults that are around them, their teachers, they're the coaches, making sure that the adults are showing up for our children. I'm thinking about a conversation I had that reminds me of this with a parent. I'll tell the story quickly. Of one of the teams that I was coaching. This happened like 3 years ago. I've told the story at least twice in soccer parenting, so I apologize if anyone's heard this, but I had a parent call me before practice, and say, hey, Skye, and this was the parent of my center midfielder, the girl that generally played in the center of the field. She's really, really good, solid player, really smart, really high soccer IQ. And she was also extremely shy. Like very rarely
Mhm.
would she make eye contact with me or other teammates. She's always kind of looking down. So her mom called me before practice one day and she said, hey, Skye, I'll call her Casey. Casey and I were talking after the game, and you said something in the post game talk that she didn't understand. And so I've been working with her all day on trying to get up the courage to come and talk to you about it and ask you a question about it. And um, and so um, and so if she comes anywhere close to you, can you please try to engage with her?
That's the sign.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I loved the fact that the mom was like calling me on this. Like we were in this together. Like we're gonna work through her shyness. What a great life lesson. But it's just a sign of really the supportive environment that we want our children to have around us. And we want to be able to talk about our children's weaknesses to the coach so that we can help try to solve them together, and especially weaknesses around these types of things like
Mhm.
shyness or interactions with people. Not so much parents don't necessarily need to be bringing things around the game itself forward to coaches can bring those forward to parents. But anyway, it was great. During the training session, during a water break, she was like inching her way over to me. So I like bent down to tie my shoe to get on like lower than her
Her
level.
level. Yeah.
Looked up, was like, oh hey, and then asked the question. It was awesome.
It's great.
Afterwards, I like fist bumped the mom or gave her a little wink, I think, as we walked out of the park at the night. But anyway, we need to be looking for that supportive environment. If a child's experiencing burnout or starting to get a little overwhelmed with the schedule, it's totally fine to call the coach. It should be like everyone should be working in the best interest of the player and just say, hey, I'm starting to notice this, or having trouble sleeping, or just haven't had a lot of rest days. Just kind of wanted you to think about that, and see if there's any way we can support. And let's pop into motivation here, which is promoting a growth mindset. I think the next slide's around motivation,
Oh,
but any questions
great.
for me ahead of that? Sorry.
I think we're good in terms of
Okay.
questions. Yeah. Thanks, Skye. This is all really great stuff.
Good, good. Um, so Emily, I know we had talked about my battery, just it's totally fine in case you're worried.
Okay, great, great.
For those of you listening, I'm having trouble with my computer battery, and I was like afraid I might lose it in the middle of the session.
Yeah, I would hate if you dropped on this slide. This is your expertise.
Yeah, yeah. To be clear, I'm not a sports psychologist.
Yes,
I'm a
yes,
parent
yes.
like everyone else. I did not know what self-determination theory was when I founded Soccer Parenting. I've since learned through being curious and asking lots of questions of sports psychologists, doing research myself. I didn't know Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University and growth versus fixed mindset, which has been largely her research. And I probably knew about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. But this is really so important for parents to learn about. And this is the science behind motivation. So when our children have a bit of a break, or when our kids are experiencing maybe some burnout, I think what we're really trying to hope happens in those moments as they recover or they have a break is that they feel a sense of motivation and they feel a sense of wanting to get back at it. We want our children to arrive at a space where they're excited to come back to sport, where they work through some burnout, or after a break, they're excited to come back. And that's really creating a foundation where they have a heightened sense of motivation. So, excuse me, self-determination theory is the science behind motivation. There's lots of great research around it. Autonomy, competence, relatedness is the general principles around
Mhm.
self-determination theory, the three principles, if you will. And let's maybe dive into each of these just for a moment. And I want you as parents that are listening to think about how this might relate to your child. But these three components, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, are really the foundation, the theory behind motivation. And so they're really each important in order for our child to have motivation. So if their environment is lacking in a sense of relatedness, then their motivation will be not as high. Or if it's lacking in autonomy, then their motivation and their sense of motivation won't be as high. So lots of really cool things we can do as parents when it comes to this concept of autonomy. One of my favorite questions with one of the parents on my daughter's team, I heard him ask it a number of times. They were actually next door neighbors of ours, so we interacted with them a lot. And I heard this. This is kind of a theme of the way their dad parented them. The question was, well, what are you going to do about it? If there was any complaining, if there was a sense of, maybe even not getting along with a sibling, with in this case, with the kids next door. Well, what are you going to do about it? And really pushing the ownership back to the child. And so, things that we oftentimes can consider in a sports experience for our children is something as simple as making them get their water before training and make sure
Yeah.
their hydration is cared for. Or, when I see parents of the 6-year-old carrying the backpack of the child, I go, oh, because this really hits two things of motivation. It hits autonomy, them taking care of themselves, but it also hits relatedness, them feeling a
Hmm.
connection to the sport. Like, this is their identity. They got their backpack, they're walking to the field. If the parent is like thinking they're helping by, oh, that's heavy, you have a big game, I'll carry your backpack or I'll carry your water. No, let them carry it. Those things literally, interestingly, can build a sense of motivation. My children did laundry from a really young age. They were responsible for washing their own uniforms and making sure they had their practice gear together. I'm not saying it was always perfect. I'm not saying I didn't sometimes switch the laundry into the dryer if they forgot and I noticed it. And so it would be difficult to pack the bag in the morning before school. So we sort of worked together on it, but generally speaking, that was the case. The other thing, a little trick that I was talking to parents about a while ago is like having a drawer set place in the house where all the sports uniforms go. So they're not kind of all over the place. So there's one place that the child knows, and then that might help them be able to pack their bag, make sure they have their uniforms, make sure they have their shin guards, and that we're not following along and taking care of that too much. Not so much the case now with all of the boots that are now synthetic leather, but kids need to take care of their equipment. If they come home and it's been raining outside or they have field pellets from turf field all over, they need to clean it up. They need to get the vacuum out and clean up the car, which my dad, not, I mean, it certainly didn't have pellets from turf growing up, but it wasn't that with the car. But if the car was dirty, my dad was always making me clean it. Those things are important. Also, kids feeling like they're in control of the choices that they're making around sport. If they want to do that. Do you want to do futsal? Do you want to be on that team? Most of your team is playing over the winter, is playing futsal, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So them being in charge of the choices. I told the story on soccer parenting around my daughter Callie the summer before her junior year. I think I mentioned it in the last Sports Recruits webinar we did even. This is an important year for recruiting. And Callie wanted to be a CIT at a summer camp in Maine that she'd been going to since she was 6. And this was the summer before her junior year, that you go all summer and you be a CIT at camp. And so she missed all of the recruiting opportunities through the summer. There were no ID camps or anything like that. Conversations with coaches were really limited. There's no phones or cell phones, and she was gone. And that was hard for me, but it was really important that it was her choice. And so that, I've spent a lot of time on autonomy here. Sorry. There's
No, you're good.
so many ways
I know.
parents that
I
we
know.
and so competence, this is feeling effective in your environment. Like, this is us supporting our children, like calling out. When I think about my mentor, Tony DeChico, and his title of his book is Catch Them Being Good. When our children feel like they're getting better or they've been effective, and when we can help them see the positive, I think a really great tool for this is them watching video, and then they're like, wow, look what I just did. So if they could feel effective and feel a sense of competence, this is also maybe juggling and going from I can juggle 6 times to I can juggle 60, I can juggle 100. That's this feeling of competence. It helps our children feel more motivated. And then relatedness. So autonomy, confidence, relatedness. And this sense of connection, this has gotten lost in youth sports too much. Our children are so busy that they don't hang out with their team. And we do a lot of work at Soccer Parenting around sense of community theory and the important role that a parent can play in establishing a sense of community within the team, making sure that there's moments that players can all interact together, that they spend time together, that our child identifies as being an athlete and being a soccer player in a really
Mhm.
positive way that gives them a sense of connection. This will help them feel motivated. Um, and then possibly you haven't heard of self-determination theory before. Maybe you have. It's becoming a little bit more mainstream in parenting. I feel like growth versus fixed mindset is really popular within teaching. Schools are really clear on this. So maybe you've heard of this before. But our children have a mindset, and it's not one way or the other. You don't have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Your mindset is always just sort of relative across the scale. Sometimes we as adults, we might be leaning more towards a growth mindset in certain moments or more towards a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is a high performance mindset. This is a mindset where you believe that the harder you work, the more time and effort and practice that you put on the fact that you will improve. And a fixed mindset is sort of a down on the dumps mindset, or like training doesn't matter. I don't have the potential to improve. Um, and one of the really key things that we can do with motivation and around growth and fixed mindset, and if parents are listening, you want to jot this down. I really, really like the TED Talk by Dr. Carol Dweck, who, as I mentioned before, has pioneered a lot of this research. But I really like her TED Talk that's called The Power of Yet. So DWECK is the last name of the doctor. And the talk is The Power of Yet. And so it's using the word yet. Oh, you haven't learned that yet is a really effective way for us as parents to show up. Our child is frustrated. They missed a easy goal with their left foot. Well, you haven't figured that out yet is a great way for us to respond to give them a sense of hope and optimism.
Mm.
And so then, so we really, our children can build a growth mindset, and we, through the words and the way we interact with our children, can help them develop more of a growth mindset. I think is an important takeaway here. And then, different types of motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic. We want our children to be intrinsically motivated. That's what we want them to want to do something because they enjoy it, not because of any affirmations they might receive, another newspaper article that mentions their name. Those types of things should not be motivating. Our children should be motivated because they have this real passion. And then if they're feeling a lack of motivation or interest, that can sort of be a sign of burnout, is important to understand as well. I
Awesome.
think I have one more slide here. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, how we can support players during these moments where they have a little bit of a
Hmm.
break. I think I've talked mostly about this, but I think the wrap up concept here is like finding the right balance. And it's what I said at the beginning. It's so hard to like figure out when to push, when to pull, when to get involved, when not, when to leave our children when we're talking too much, when we're pushing too hard, or maybe they want that. And finding that balance is so key. But we need to make sure that we're considering autonomy, confidence, relatedness. Like kind of sometimes as parents go through a little checklist and see that our
Hmm.
children have all of this figured out. Using the word yet to encourage the growth mindset. If you're not familiar with the growth mindset, do some research about that. We have some great articles on soccer parenting in the Soccer Parent Resource Center, the education platform for parents. We have some game plans on motivation itself, so parents can learn through that little toolkit that we've created around that. And then, we want our children to be intrinsically motivated. So we need to encourage and highlight the fun and the joy, um, and um, and also demonstrate and highlight. This kind of goes to growth mindset too. But my final point on this would be to talk about the process, not the actual results. So I'll use juggling as an example. Your child decides to go juggle, and they go outside to practice because they have a goal for it. And it's not, oh my gosh, how many juggles did you get when they walk in? And you're not talking about the result of their performance. Instead, you're saying,
Mhm.
what a great decision you made to go outside and juggle for 10 minutes. That was awesome. And that's our response. We don't even ask about what actually happened.
Yeah. I love the yet concept. Just like thinking about it, like even, as an, I don't have kids yet, but like even as an adult, someone says like, oh yeah, yet. And it's like, oh wait, I can do that.
Mhm.
Or I could get to there. You think I can do that? Wait, maybe I can, it just gives you confidence as well of, oh yeah, I can do that. So that's really cool. I'm going to listen to that TED Talk.
Yeah, please
Um,
do.
yeah. Great, Skye. That was all super, super helpful of how guardians, parents can be helping their student athletes, identifying burnout. And, you keep saying autonomy. Here at Sports Recruits, we too want the student athlete to be driving their recruiting process, but sometimes they're going to need some help. And that's what's great about Sports Recruits. You can have as many parents or guardians on the website to really help guide you and help do some of these things. And some things that they can be doing on the recruiting side of the off season is updating their recruiting profile, right? Everyone is online. When you need something, you go to Google, you search for it. So college coaches are doing that. They're on Sports Recruits looking for student athletes. So after the season ended, is there any new athletic stats or athletic accolades you need to add? Video, right? You've definitely got video from the season. College coaches need to see video on their your profile in order to further evaluate you. So, Sports Cruise profile is totally free. You can put all this information on for college coaches to easily see. Um, Jumped ahead with video, but video is so important with especially postseason. So kind of have four different buckets of the different types of videos that college coaches are wanting to see. Pinned playlists is a new feature that we have on Sports Recruits taken directly from college coach feedback. Student athletes are able to categorize their film into certain skills, which makes it a lot easier for college coaches to go and evaluate student athletes, right? Okay, I want to see Emily's assists. I really haven't seen them. Let me just watch the assist clips. So right at the top of your profile, it's capturing your best moments. And this is what college coaches wanted. We listened to them, we gave it to them. What's also really cool is with the pinned playlist, you're going to know exactly which clips college coaches are watching. So it gives you a really high level of transparency beyond, hey, they just watched this video to, hey, they watched 10 of my clips. Wow, that's a lot of clips. Then we have, skills video, training video. This is done in a practice session. It's really to show your technique and you're doing the same skill over and over again for college coaches to really dive into your technique. Highlight reels, collection of the best clips from live competition. This could be from your full high school season. It could be from a tournament. Very, very important were these highlight reels that you're showing a variety of different skills. You college coaches don't want to see the same thing over and over again. So make sure that you're showing your full variety of skills. And then finally, live footage. Some college coaches do want to see this. It doesn't need to be a full game, it could be 10 minutes, but they do like to see what happens maybe off ball, maybe when you're not in camera to really see, your soccer IQ. So, as a parent, how could you be helping them? Maybe you could, sit with your athlete as they're going through their footage, maybe give suggestions of what you think a 4 or 5 star clip is. Going through footage can be super, super daunting. I encourage student athletes to gradually do it and not wait until the end of the season. If you did wait till the end of the season, it's all piled up. My pro tip for you is to maybe watch it at 2 speed to be able to identify yourself quickly and then clip up the footage. But definitely take the time now with being in the off season to get that video as updated as possible on your Sports Recruits profile. And then communicating with college coaches. So parents, guardians, how can you help the student athlete? Again, they should be the one sending the messages to these college coaches. Now, with the Sports Recruits platform, if you're logged into your account and you're typing and helping that student athlete, the email is always going to come from them. So you don't need to worry about an email coming from you. It's always going to have the student athlete's first and last name. However, it's really important you're letting your athlete lead the way. So some things that you can help with them do is maybe create a game plan, right? When was the last time you reached out to college coaches? Have we sent that introduction message? Okay, we already did that. Let's update your video and then email them and let them know that you have new video um, for them to evaluate. Other things you can do to help them is maybe checking their grammar, making sure they spelled everything correctly, making sure they have the right college in that body of the message, and making sure that they have the right last name. We get this question all the time. I actually saw an email come in this morning. Hey, I used the wrong name for a college coach. Can you retract the email? We cannot do that. Sports Recruits is just like any other messaging system. So it's really important that you're being diligent when you are sending these messages. So again, reasons you should be reaching out. If your student athlete hasn't sent that introduction message, definitely get that through. If you have any events coming up, sharing your schedule before, maybe you went to an ID clinic or an ID camp after the event, thanking that coach for the time, let them know about new or updated video, and then maybe transcripts are going to be coming up soon. So getting that transcript uploaded to your Sports Recruits profile and letting them know it's there. Great. We went through a ton of information. Skye, really, really helpful, super, super interesting. And yeah, I think it's really important that we are supporting our student athletes physically and mentally, right? Burnout is real. It happens. And I think you gave, the audience really great advice for how to identify it, how to help with it, and how to continue motivation moving forward. So
Thanks.
really
Thanks.
appreciate
This
that.
is a great conversation. I like parents thinking about this like non-linear nature of development, like the setbacks, all of those things are just a part of the developmental process. And our children don't,
Mhm.
just go from being a 6-year-old to playing soccer in college. It's this up and down. It's not a straight line. It's non-linear, and it's supposed to be that way. And we need to embrace that, embrace those setbacks. And really support our child through those. And you used the word joy earlier. We talked about fun. I mean, at the end of the day, our children just need to love this game. And I think that as parents, we need to really be driving that. So yeah, I appreciate this conversation today, and glad we had
Yeah.
time to catch up on it. I do think these are really, really important lessons for parents supporting kids with big dreams.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Skye. And again, everyone's going to be emailed a recording of this webinar. We're going to send you some resources with soccer parenting and sports recruits. Any questions you may have, definitely reach out to help@sportsrecruits.com. Skye, what's your guys' help email? What's the
Um,
best way to reach you guys?
admin@soccerparenting.com.
Great. I'll put that in the follow-up email too.
Awesome.
Cool. Skye, thanks so much for your time. Always great having you on. And guys, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you on more webinars.
Thanks, everyone.